What's up, everybody? It's Josh coming at you from Nerdvengers Tower. We need to talk about Obi-Wan Kenobi, Episode 5. As I said before this episode came out, this was kind of a make-or-break episode for me. Really was excited to see some of the fun things that we thought would be in the Kenobi show materialize in these last two episodes, and I thought Episode 5 would be a good place for at least a few of those. And on top of that, I honestly haven't been loving the show much at all. And so I was really looking for Episode 5 to kind of take me in a direction of, wow, there's some really, really fun Star Wars stuff going on here, even if I don't feel great about the story overall. And there's a lot of sort of things going on with the writing and directing that I'm not a fan of, at the very least. There's awesome Star Wars stuff in here, and it's worth the price of admission because of Hayden Christensen and Obi-Wan Kenobi. And I'm happy to report that for the most part, I think Episode 5 delivers on that promise. There's a lot of good stuff in here. And I think the main thing, of course, is the flashback sequences with Hayden Christensen and Ewan McGregor fighting and having some kind of a training session. This is honestly something that has been sorely missing from the show overall. I think many fans really wanted to see Hayden and Ewan actually have Clone Wars era flashbacks, and this was a big part of this episode. And from what I see online, most fans are absolutely loving it. And I will say this, I thought it was fantastic for the story. I thought it was fantastic for the characters. And I actually think that the choreography in this fight was freaking sweet, man. Seeing these guys actually get back at it, and Hayden specifically, was fantastic with his actual saber moves, and you could tell he really trained a lot for this. It's well shot, it's well directed. I do have a few gripes or nitpicks with it overall, and number one would be that I think they should have de-aged Hayden just a little bit more and perhaps done something to alter his voice. He just frankly doesn't sound the same that he did way back then. That's completely normal and understandable, but I don't understand why they go to such great lengths in The Mandalorian to make Luke Skywalker look and sound like he should for that specific time, and they don't put seemingly the same amount of care into Hayden Christensen. Perhaps they just thought, hey man, he looks really, really young, and I think they did probably do some de-aging on him and Ewan in that scene. But despite that, it ends up looking pretty different than Anakin from Attack of the Clones. Similarly, when you see him in the Order 66 shots, he doesn't quite look like the Anakin from Revenge of the Sith. There's a missing scar. His long hair isn't waving in front of his face. It's perhaps there and hidden behind the cloak. But regardless, there's little visual continuity errors there, but nothing that would completely take my enjoyment of those moments away. But the other thing that I didn't love about the flashback sequence was that we didn't get a lot of dialogue from Hayden specifically. Ewan does deliver a lot of the dialogue for those sequences. It really carries the weight of that scene. And I don't know if they had other lines for Hayden, it just didn't come across well or whatever, but I would have written it in a way that you're seeing Anakin be more of an actual character. He's something of a characterization in these flashback sequences, and just like the over-aggressive, crazy Anakin. And I think it really just makes me think that Lucas did not get enough credit for the way he put subtlety into the prequels. I think a lot of people look back at the prequels and just think it's a bunch of glamour and it's a bunch of like not good performances and not good characters all pulled together in some kind of Star Wars story. And I just really don't think that's the case. Like, there's real subtlety in the performance and in the way that the prequels were directed. And I certainly didn't feel that same level of nuance in the character of Anakin during these flashback sequences. But having said that, it was freaking awesome. We've been waiting, and it was well worth the wait, in my opinion. I would love to see more of this. I'd love to see more of it in the show overall. I don't know if we'll get more of it in Episode 6, but it was fan-freaking-tastic. We also get the long-awaited reveal of the story motivations and clarity for the character of Reva, and I must admit, this was pretty cool. People had theorized that maybe she was trying to kill Vader. Maybe this whole thing was to try to get revenge for Anakin coming in and slaughtering the younglings in the temple. And I didn't really think that that would be the way that they would go, but it was really cool to see. I can't say that it's executed perfectly because the scene between Obi and Reva is really weird, where they come up in the middle of this, siege and have a quiet conversation between the steel. It's not my favorite, and her character turns into this empathetic character to show her suffering, and it just feels kind of inorganic to the scene itself. Again, doesn't totally kill it for me, and I do generally like what they did with Reva in this episode, at least right up until the very end. And man, I think the most important thing and the most successful thing in the episode for me was Big Daddy Vader doing Big Daddy Vader things, baby. That was dope. I mean, he storms in, grabs one of the ships with the power of the Force as it's taking off, slams it into the ground, rips off parts of the hull and looks in there. And, you know, the other ship then gets away, which is a little bit of a weird issue for me. But regardless, you got to give credit where credit is due. Those Vader sequences and the way they utilize his power in the Force, epic. And honestly, the fight between Reva and Vader is one of the coolest Vader fights I've ever seen. Like, I'm saying that absolutely no cap. I loved that sequence. I've watched it twice now, and it's so cool. It shows you just how effortlessly Anakin is able to defeat Reva. It really puts Vader on that kind of a pedestal, which was fantastic because one thing that the show has done is show us how powerful Reva is, almost in a way that feels really inorganic and can be an issue at times for the show. But regardless of all of that, it has to be said that we watch Reva be incredibly powerful throughout this episode, only to just totally fail in the face of Vader, as she should, but it just really serves to show us as the audience how wildly far ahead and powerful Darth Vader is, which is great. And Vader's taunting her in this fight. He doesn't even use his own lightsaber. What an absolute G. He's just kind of avoiding her stuff, almost like a kung fu master, using the Force with subtle movements to sort of flick her back. I absolutely dug it. He grabs her saber from her after stopping the helicopter thing with simply the power of the Force. He grabs part of it, throws the other half to her. I thought it was oh, man, it was really, really cool. And the crew and everybody involved in making Vader able to fight like this, just my hat's off to them. And I'm really excited to see hopefully more of this, even in episode 6, when Vader does have a fight with Obi-Wan, at least we think, and perhaps in other shows too. Like there's the possibility of Vader being in Andor. There's the possibility of Vader being in Ahsoka. And if we get more of this juice, man, I'm here for it. Like legitimately, fantastic stuff. Had me just really, really hyped up. And upon watching it again, I was like, damn, this is so cool. The way he's still heavy with his movements, very powerful, but still somehow agile. Like, give credit where credit is due. This was fantastic stuff. I also absolutely love the Grand Inquisitor coming back in and being a total D-bag to her, and Vader and the Grand Inquisitor just looking down at Reva after Vader has stabbed her, seemingly killing her, was fantastic. It was really, really cool. He was like such a douchebag about it, which I loved, and it did solidify, you know, putting canon back in its proper place and him just being there the whole time. I also want to give credit to the very ending of the show because I believe the setup for the end of this episode really does lay out where we're going in episode 6, and it does set expectations for a very cool episode. They're in space, seemingly have escaped, but their hyperdrive is out and the Empire is coming after them. This will force Obi-Wan to take some kind of an action to perhaps lure Vader away, probably setting up another epic fight between the two of them. That's awesome. But it also sets up and establishes that Reva now knows about the children, and she knows that one of them is on Tatooine. We now have all of the pieces as to how she's going to put this together, that Kenobi was on Tatooine protecting Luke, and we see Luke laying in bed at the end of the episode. It's a very, very obvious setup to that kind of conflict. Now, look, the canon part of me, the Star Wars fan part of me, is not super down with where this is likely going. And of course, I have read the leaks. We're not going to talk about them exactly in this video, but they do bother me. I'm not down with it. But for the sake of the actual show and pacing of the drama and the tension, this does set us up to be at the edge of our seats in episode 6, just kind of trying to see how this crazy thing's going to go down. And so, look, that's all the good stuff. And yeah, there's a lot of fun in this episode. I frankly think if the show had been more of this kind of stuff in episodes 1 through 4, the discussion around Kenobi would be very different, because while I still have a ton of problems with this episode, I walked away at least feeling really good as a Star Wars fan. And I think importantly for where Star Wars is at as a brand, I felt like attention and care was given to stuff that I really care about, like bringing Hayden back and doing this scene in the flashback with Obi-Wan. is awesome. It shows that they care and they know that that's something we want. Having Vader be as powerful and as awesome in that battle as he is, it shows care and it shows that they know what we want. I talked about the social contract between corporations and, commercial art and consumers a lot on the Nerd Theory podcast on Monday. And it's something I still really have issues with this particular show. But this episode did feel like they're giving me some of that love. Like I kept asking, where's the love in the show? And you can see it on point in a lot of different parts of this episode. However, again, this is certainly not a perfect episode, and it's definitely not my favorite Star Wars show as till now or up till this point. I really did expect more from the show, and this episode does have some really weird problems. Like, the direction continues to baffle me. It's really uneven, creates weird pacing issues. The siege itself, which is supposed to be this incredible, awesome moment, is really hard to actually follow because of the way that it's shot and edited. Reva is sometimes at the front of the line coming through and then seemingly way back again. It's just really freaking weird. The writing is super convenient for the plot rather than being actually well put together. Like the fact that Bail Organa sets that perfect message that has all the details that one might need to figure out why he was on Tatooine, and then that happens to be dropped at the end of the episode, and it happens to be picked up by Reva. Things like that are really weird to me. The worst part of the episode, which I still just laugh at when I watch it, is the fact that they get Kenobi, bring him out of the tunnels, have that conversation with Reva, and then they take him back into the tunnels. Like, why? Like, there's literally no reason other than to advance the plot. It's just really weird. Like, honestly, guys, like, my opinion here, the writing in Kenobi has been straight up booty cheeks, like very, very bad, to the point where it's kind of hard for me to enjoy even the really good parts of the show. And I guess I'm hoping that somehow episode 6 will be really, really tight and tie up some of those holes. But overall, man, it's just, again, it doesn't have the level of love and care and self-logic that I was expecting for a show like this. And Deborah's directing is really baffling at times, So there's stuff in this episode that doesn't work for me. There's a whole bunch of stuff that hasn't worked for me in the show overall. And we'll just kind of see how episode 6 shakes out and what I end up thinking about the show overall and what the fandom ends up thinking about the show overall, because, from what I see online, the fans are enamored by this episode. It's a little similar to my situation with episode 3, where like everybody loved it and I was like, ooh, I don't know about that. But this one, I do love a lot of the things that are in it, like wholeheartedly. So I'm a little bit more positive than I was after episode 3. But yeah, overall, man, just a mixed bag, but enough good stuff here where I'm going to give this episode 8 out of 10. And I am really excited to see where we go in the next episode. So there you have it. I'm sure you've got some thoughts about Kenobi episode 5 and Kenobi overall, so feel free to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and come on by my live streaming channel on Thursday at 10:30, where I will be breaking down my full thoughts on the episode and discussing it with fans live.